Hi everyone, I am Musa Amidu and I'll be presenting on the issue of whether excessive alcohol consumption is associated with depression in the United States of America. Moving on, this presentation has been divided into 5 parts: the introduction, research questions, methods, results, and discussions. To begin, this presentation seeks to inform its audience on the issue of whether excessive alcohol consumption is associated with depression in the United States of America. This research is important to me and I believe should be important to you because the youth and adults worldwide suffer from depression and turn to alcoholism for comfort. Moving on to research questions. The main research question at hand here is number of drinks taken on days drunk associated with depression. The first point here is gender a factor of alcoholism and depression, and will be further explained by a paper written by Choi and Dinito in 2011. According to the research that Choi and Dinito made, it can be concluded that males are the gender considered as alcoholics, while females are the most depressed gender. This conclusion was not so convincing, but a point was mentioned that females are more depressed because of how emotional they are compared to males. Realize that males tend to hide their emotion through alcohol consumption, and that is why their records of being alcohol consumers are off the charts compared to females. Moving on to the second point about whether the stress that college students feel is a factor of alcoholism and depression. Peterson wrote a paper, and according to Peterson, apart from fraternities in colleges, college students turn to alcoholism because they are depressed due to the stress that they face with constant assignments, projects, and others. We realize that it's not only alcohol that college students turn to, they turn to drugs and other stuff, and that is why college students are mostly considered as people who drink a lot and then enter into drug and stuff like that. Peterson made this assumption and went to the University of North Dakota, and it confirmed his theory. Moving on to the third point of do all alcoholics become depressed people? According to Davidson, although alcoholism and depression are related, we realize that people become alcoholics because they are depressed, but after they are detoxificated of all the alcohol, we realize that they are still depressed. So in other words, alcohol is not a solution to depression. Moving on to the methods. The main source of our presentation is the IPUMS Health Survey. This data provides a census and focuses on issues concerning general health status in the United States of America and their population of interest as the US citizens, more specifically the civilian non-institutionalized population of the United States of America. This data has been in existence since the year 1963 and uses stratification, clustering, and oversampling methods. Moving on to the measures. The variable of average number of drinks on days drunk was measured by labels and values. The values consist of how many days individuals are drunk in a year, whilst the labels consist of how many drinks were drunk on those days in a year. Moving on to the depression variable, it was measured by how many times individuals felt depressed, which is daily, weekly, monthly, a few times a year, and never. Moving on to the inferential tests. An ANOVA test was conducted to test the association between depression and the amount of alcohol drunk. The null hypothesis says that there's no relationship between depression and the amount of alcohol drunk, whilst the alternative hypothesis says there's a relationship between depression and the amount of alcohol drunk. Now let's talk about the results aspects of the presentation. Whereas that on the left hand side is a graph showing the percentage of respondents who drink a lot versus whether depression is a cause. We're talking about the summary statistic on the right hand side of the slide. So with 30 drinks, you realize that about 12.6% approximately of people drink 30 drinks daily. About 15.3% approximately of people drink 30 drinks weekly. About 16.3% of people drink 30 drinks monthly. About 12.44% of people drink 30 drinks a few times a year. And about 13.2% of people do not drink 30 drinks at all. The second part of the results slide talk about the ANOVA test statistic results, where we have a p-value of about 2.05 e minus 11, a degree of freedom of 4, and a sum square of about 26,862. Realize that there is enough evidence to support the claim that there's an association between depression and the amount of alcohol drunk by the respondents. They are dependent, and there's the possibility of a type 1 error. Moving on to the discussion, I'd first like to talk about the relationship between alcohol intake and depression. According to Davidson in the year 1995, people who have a history of alcohol intake mostly tend to have signs and symptoms of depression. Reading his paper, I realized that he divided a group of people into two, that is a group of alcoholics, and detoxificated the first part of these alcoholics. And after the 9 days that he did his research, you realize that those people he detoxificated of the alcohol still had some signs and symptoms of depression. Let's move on to the solution to the problem. I believe a policy should be made to limit the amount of alcohol an individual should consume, and this could help a lot by reducing the depression in individuals as the two of them have a relationship. Moving on to the suggestions for further research, I believe research should be made to curb the issues of stress among college students, as this leads to alcoholism, drug abuse, depression, among others in college students and other individuals. These are the links to the papers I used in my research. Thank you very much for your time.